The observations that I had most clearly about tremoring came when I was living in several countries that were experiencing war. And I myself tremored out of a great deal of fear, and so did the population that I was living with. But I began to observe it because it was pervasive. And we all tried to stop it because we thought it was bad. But I began to reflect on it and ask, if the human organism is doing this organically and naturally, then it must be genetically encoded in it. And so that can't be just bad, as we've been taught socially. So I began to explore the tremor mechanism, discovered that animals do this by their very nature. And then I worked with some neurologists around tremoring, and we began to recognize that the tremoring is evoked in very specific situations. It activates itself, uh, goes through its own tremoring process, and deactivates itself. Very much like when you're shivering in the cold. And this is a perfect example. When we start to shiver, the body started that all by itself. We didn't make it do that. And then when the body gets warm enough, it stops shivering. So it has this natural mechanism built in. Well, the same thing with tremoring is that it starts by itself and it can end by itself. So that's how I began to recognize it. And then I thought, if it is genetically encoded in us, and this is normal for us to use in situations of severe stress or tension or anxiety, then there must be an easily accessible way to get this tremor mechanism to activate, even in the safety of our own homes where we're not in a stressful environment. So I worked with some people around the physiology of the body, and then I discovered through different body therapies that if you move the body in certain positions, which is what we do in TRE or what we do in neurogenic integration, move it in certain positions that introduce a sense of safety, expansion, and openness, and the tremor mechanism activates immediately, almost immediately. And then when you start to bring the body into a greater sense of safety, the tremor mechanism can actually get stronger and start moving through the structure of the body, finding contracted states and releasing them. So I really discovered it by living in situations where I experienced the tremor mechanism many times myself, with other populations or people in the population I was living with also experiencing it. And then it was just deductive reasoning after that. Why does it happen? How does it happen? And what's its value? And then through that process, we ended up discovering that we can actually elicit it and facilitate and actually use it.